Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's nice to meet you, the distinguished audience. Okay, today we are going to discuss related to how we are going to protect the environments based on the Islamic perspective. If we look at the damage and also the pollution which has been occur in the world, so we can see that it's such kind of evidence that the human being contribute a lot to this kind of problem. For example, in Indonesia, you know that the deforestation in Indonesia is very massive, so that reducing of the biodiversity and also the function of the forest reduce a lot. For example, the forest has such kind of function actually. If we can refer to the ecological function, economic function, and also the social function. And when we look at about the illegal logging, also is one of the cause why the forest in Indonesia reduce a lot. On the other hand, also that the development of industry in Indonesia also cause serious problem. For example, the emission which is come from the industrial activities cause the pollution. So the quality of the air in Indonesia, for example, in Jakarta, that we have such kind of serious pollution. On the other hand, also, if you look at in the river in Indonesia, so that the river is not clean water, but you are going to find a lot of garbage in the river. So what happened in the raining season? That in this kind of situation can condition cause flooding, and who are going to be the victim? The victim is the human being. So if we have to consider that human activities affect a lot to the destruction of environment, to the environmental problem. So as the Muslim people, how that we are going to learn from the verses of Al-Quran and also from the teaching of our Prophet Muhammad. The first that I would like to explain what is the relationship between human and the environment based on the Islamic perspective. First, that all the creation of Allah actually is used for the human being, for the interest of the human being. Human as the distinguished living creature, which is different with the other living creature. Allah give us how we are going to be able to think, which is different with the animals and also other living creatures. So this is one of the aspects which is distinguished between human and the other living creatures. Of course, there are many differences between human and living creatures. First of all, that as a human being, actually we are part of the environment. The environment consists of living thing and non-living thing, which is those kind of living thing and non-living thing support each other. And human is not spared from them. We are not the outside of the environment, but we are included in the environment. So when the human being cause serious damage to the environment, so that human will become the victims here. And what is the principle in Islam, the relationship between human and also the environment which is consists of living things and non-living things here, that we are as the partner. Human is not the owner of the earth, but the principle of Islam that human as a khalifa or stewardship. It means that human has such kind of responsibility how we are going to manage our environment, how we are going to protect the environment that has been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the due proportion. So it means in the violent condition. If we referring to the verses of Quran, in the Ar-Rum verses 41, it is mentioned that the damage of the environment, whether on the land and also in the sea, because of the human hand. It's me because of the human activities that created such kind of damage. And what happened later on, that Allah also give us some kind of lesson. So the consequences of the human being creating such kind of destruction of the environment, and then we can get this kind of impact, such as flooding, and for example also the increasing of the temperature in the world. with is we are familiar with the climate change impacts. So this is one of the verses which teach us that we have already caused we have got the consequences of we have already done. Actually, that Allah has been created everything in the balanced position, so that we as the Khalifah here should be maintain this balanced position. But what is in the reality that human often violate those kind of obligation. We know exactly what kind of impact if we destruct the environment, if we make such kind of, for example, pollution, whether we do such kind of activities in the industrial activities and also in the other activities such as the transportation activities. We cannot do this in good manner so that we are going also to be the victim of our activities. And there is also another principle in Islam. It's not only that human as the stewardship or the Khalifah in the earth, how we are going to be responsible with our action here, what we are going to be done in this earth. Of course, that there are some consequences in hereafter. So we are going to be responsible in hereafter, related also to what we have done to the environment. Okay, the second aspect of the Islamic perspective also that we as a human being, that Allah has given us such kind of amanah to us. For example, that as Allah has already created everything in due process, and also in verses Yasin 36, there is explained that we as a human being has to understand that Allah has already created everything in pairs. For example, that there is man and woman nights, and also we have the day, so bad and good and so on. So that those kind of verses, we can take such kind of learning on this kind of verses. So what we have to do in here, that how that those kind of creation of Allah, that we as a human being has to perform the obligation, has to obey with the command of Allah, how that we are going to manage our environment. Actually, that the teaching of Islam related to the environment, that we as the stewardship or as the Khalifah in the earth, there are some teaching which is also delivered by our Prophet Muhammad. For example, that our Prophet Muhammad also asks to the followers, for example, that we have to treat all animals, all living creatures in good way. We have also to utilize the resources in a good manner. For example, in the abolition process, that we cannot use excessively for our water, so that we can take enough for our water how to take abolition. And also there is such kind of teaching of our Prophet Muhammad. At the first day Hijrah from Mecca to Medina, that at that time also that our Prophet Muhammad has already successfully to create such kind of forest. So this, of course, is very useful for them at that time, that the forest has such kind of the function, as I previously mentioned, is about the ecological function, how the forest can absorb the emission and also release the oxygen, and also that forest can preserve the water resources. On the other hand, also that in order to protect certain kind of animals and also certain kind of the flora, for example, the plant which is very unique and is very rarely to find, so that our Prophet Muhammad also give us an example that he created the zone, the zone we call it as the protected zone. And this kind of teaching of our Prophet at the time being, also there is the international community also make such kind of, such kind of program. We name the program as the protected area, that this kind of protected area can be applied in the forest, and also in the sea, so in the sea there are some kind of protected area where they have to preserve the very unique fish, for example. So this kind of action that the teaching of Islam, which is can be found in the verses of the Quran itself and also in the Hadith, that there are some learning that we can also adopt it at the present time. So and vice versa, that Islamic teaching following what is the law which is applicable at the present time, but those kind of law that from my understanding that the law which is applicable to environmental protection and environmental management in the present time actually derived or adopted from the Islamic teaching, such as the protected areas, for example. On the other hand, also the principle of sustainable development, how that we are going to sustain our earth, we are going to sustain our resources, is also based on the Islamic teaching, that Allah also asks or comment to us that we have to utilize the resources in good manner, so for the interest, as not for the present generation, but also for the interest of the future generation. Because as in the present generation, we are not the owner, but we are as the stewardship, we are as the Khalifah. So that we had to be responsible. The right of the present generation also the same with the right of the present generation. So in the case of how we are going to utilize the resources that have been created by Allah, so that those kind of obligation has to be performed. And of course that as not only that this is the teaching of Islam, that we are going to ask the people to do this. So we need also the legal instrument. So as we live in a state here in Indonesia, so that the government of Indonesia also delivering or issuing many kind of act, how to guarantee that those kind of principle, which is the stewardship principle, that can be adopted from the Islamic teaching, here can also be enforced to the people in Indonesia using the legal instrument. And the third one, if we understand about the principle of, first is about the stewardship principle, and the second one about the amanah, that we are going to perform what has been commanded by Allah to all of us. And the third one is the principle of Tawheed. It means that there is such kind of principle is about the oneness of Allah, that Allah has created everything for the sake of the human being itself, and also that those kind of power that is owned by Allah, there is no one, there is no other living creatures that can meet on it, that can okay, we continue with the third aspect of the Islamic teaching. The third aspect is about the Tawheed, about the oneness of Allah, so that everything has been created by Allah perfectly, so that this kind of creation is very perfect. It's not need how we are going to improve. The system which is created by Allah is very perfect system, so that this kind of system is good system, and there is no need to be interfered by human being. However, that as a human being, that Allah give us the ratio how we are going to think. It means that this kind of obligation actually is such kind of the learning process for the human being. How that we are going to give more respect, to acknowledge more to the existence of Allah. So this process, for example, that in our environment there are a lot of problems at the present time, and especially for the time being, we have such kind of problem of climate change. So the climate change is one of the problem which is become the international problem. It's not only local, but both developing countries and advanced, at least developed countries, get severe impact on the climate change. So what we are going to do at the time, we recognize that why that this kind of impact, the bad impact of the climate change, such as the rising of the sea levels, increasing of the temperature, and then flooding everywhere. On the other side also, we have such kind of place that there is no water at all. So this problem is become our problem, how we are going to face. So there are such kind of learning, and what can we do now at the present time? So we have to do the innovation. We develop our knowledge, we develop our science, how to overcome this problem. So this is how that we are, as the human being, has such kind of obligation that we have to make such kind of effort. It's not just how we are going to avoid the disaster happen, and we just saying that this is the what is Allah given to us, but actually what happening at the present time is because the result of the consequences of our bad behavior of the environments. I think today that is all that we can present, that what kind of learning that we can take from the Islamic perspective, how we are going to manage and how we are going to preserve our environments. Hopefully that as a human being, if all of us performing our obligation and also performing what become the command of Allah, and also we following and also conducting what has been delivered by our Prophet Muhammad, on the practice of our Prophet Muhammad related to the how he managed the environment, how he treated the environment, so that in the future that we can live in better place, and also that our environment will be still healthy in the future time, and we are not going to sacrifice of our future generation. Okay, the distinguished audiences here, that I hope that you see following me. Okay, so what we can do at the present time in order to overcome the problem that we are facing together at the present time. So first, that we have to realize that all the teaching in Islam related to the environmental management is good teaching if we can follow all this kind of command. So hopefully in the future that we are going to live in the better life and also better condition of our environments, that we as the Khalifah in the earth, we are not going to sacrificing the interest of the future generation, because we are not the owner of the earth. Allah is the owner of the earth. So we have to maintain the balance of the ecosystem, the good condition of our environments for the sake of present and also for the future generation. Thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.